Welcome back to the Early Days podcast, where it's never too late to start. I'm your host, Nick Triantos, and today I'm with the co-CEO of the world's #1 advertisement agencies. If you're into podcasting content, then this is the guy to listen to. What's up, Steve?
Hey, Nick. Appreciate you having me on today.
Let's do it, man. So take me all the way back to your early days. How was your upbringing when you were growing up, and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, so really early on, growing up in Syracuse, New York, and for those that are watching this on YouTube or video content can see the S's behind me, as I still like to represent, even though I didn't go to Syracuse University, but a fan of the school. Anyways, not much to do there in Syracuse, which led to what were my main passions. And one of them happened to be entrepreneurialism, even though I didn't know what the word meant at the time or what it really stood for. But it's something that I've always been passionate about from a pretty young age.
At what age did you start getting into that stuff?
So the first known memory of anything I have is around 7 years old when my school bus, elementary school, took us for a tour at a salt factory, which is something that Syracuse is known for. And I happened to be given probably like $2 or $3 and was the only one able in my group, elementary group, to buy a package of salt candies and realized that I could sell individual pieces for about a quarter a piece, netting me about a 100% profit on it, to then where I could buy more and sell more and learn that there's a way to make money when you see an opportunity.
Did you understand that at like a young age that something was formulating right there?
I understood that there was a profit-making opportunity and a good business opportunity. I didn't understand really the nuances behind everything and what it was, but definitely understood, and that reinforced my passion for being able to figure out a situation or a problem, be a problem solver, and make a profit off of it.
Now, when you were doing that, what made you think that way? Was it your parents? Maybe you were reading something, or just your mind in general, and that happened. You happened to come across that by mistake.
It's probably partially due to what my passion and what I fortunately feel like I've become good at. But what really led me down this, my grandfather was one of the largest influences of my life, and he was very entrepreneurial. He was an entrepreneur as well, and his entrepreneurial tendencies and things that he learned over time, he was teaching me really at a young age since I was about 5, as he was a original franchise owner of Weight Watchers, as he was part of the first ever Weight Watchers group. And through that and building out his franchise and going through the ups and downs, he started teaching me at a very young age, at 5.
Now, were you like recognizing that there was maybe a path for you at that point when he was going down there?
I mean, not really. At the time, I just really enjoyed spending time with my grandfather. Just really enjoyed it. Again, I don't know.
Well, in terms of like making a business or being a part of something that obviously it helps people.
Absolutely. I think there are parts that I really did enjoy early on. It's hard for me to remember exactly at 5, 6, 7 years old what
Yeah.
those thoughts that were going through my head. I like to think that at that very early age that was going on, but I really think I just loved spending time with him. I had a passion for this, and as those things were coming together, and as my knowledge and education were being built up over time, I was able to see things and how he interpreted things and how he was building out his business and was trying to take those learnings and take those passions and really pull it all together and put it together for myself as well.
So as you were growing a little older, maybe in like high school, more middle school, did you start developing a different mindset that you wanted to go down a business route?
Same mindset, just gaining those data points and those learnings, and really that education over time to really take it to another level. So in middle school, high school, going into high school, I was always big into sports trading cards, and I took some of my set that I didn't, athletes I didn't really necessarily care about, whether they're basketball players, football players, and started putting them up on eBay and selling so that really I
Flipping
could
them.
turn around and buy cards that I really wanted. But then I realized that, oh, I'm seeing all of these different price points and ways that individuals are marketing it on eBay, not necessarily doing the best job contextualizing what it is. I can purchase these things and then repackage them and
Flip
sell
them.
them and make money and do that. So started moving into that when I was more in high school. Now, granted, doesn't necessarily add value. It's more of finding arbitrages in a market, but it is an important lesson in business.
So after that, when you were in college, what were you trying to study with? What were you trying to be in life?
Yeah, so in college, I knew that I wanted to go down this path. The question was, from an educational standpoint, what are the important subjects to learn, understand, and different things and
Yeah.
experiences to really pull all together? So I figured everything that I knew, I figured marketing was probably the most important thing. And again, how you package something and how you understand and how you get that out to an audience. So
Just
marketing
from
was
your
definitely
experiences.
just from my experiences and from what I've seen and from what I've read a little bit on. And then
Hmm.
finance was kind of the other key component. Nothing in this world moves without dollars and cents. So I figured
Yeah.
that those two areas were the two areas that if I really focused on and then start building some skill sets on top of that, that I'd be able to move into a career like this over time.
So when did you start getting into like branding and media and stuff? Was that in college or was that after your career after college?
So not in college, but immediately after college, I also had a passion for fantasy football and sports just
Oh
in
yeah.
general. So I immediately think I have an opportunity in my head where there had never been anything where you competed in fantasy sports on a daily or weekly level.
Hmm.
So my idea was, why not have something where you can change your lineup every week, but if you like the traditional style of fantasy football, you continue to go down that path. So it was trying to look at different URLs, different websites, and different names, and came out with the name of Touchdown Kings, or as we dropped it down to TD Kings, just to
Okay.
simplify it from a URL standpoint. And had a logo built with a football with a crown on it. This all may seem very similar, especially to audiences that are big into sports betting now in daily fantasy sports. But really, we came up, myself and a co-founder who is a college roommate of mine and had a very technical background, came up with the idea of this about 2 to 3 years before the FanDuels and the DraftKings of the world. And that was really our first launch into building out our very own
Brand.
website, our very own company, our own brand, how we want to market it. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the right skill sets yet within the digital marketing landscape and just understanding how much financing we needed and what the venture capital looked like and all of that. So eventually we had a crash and burn at the end, but it was really fun to build all of that up, follow a passion and figure out learn from some of those failures and how to build future businesses.
Now, in your first business, of the fantasy football one that you're doing, what were your expectations? And after that, was that like a strong vision you had that you wanted it to work? And what were your thoughts after when it didn't work?
Yeah, so going into it, I had what every entrepreneur has, which is just pure optimism and thinking that you have an unbreakable idea and something that's going to make you a billionaire. So expectations were we were going to launch this and be competing with ESPN down the road, and that's really the vision that I think an entrepreneur needs to have if they want to go out and be successful. To put every waking hour into figuring out how you're going to accomplish
How to figure it
that
out.
vision over whatever that period of time is. So that was really it. Unfortunately, again, it didn't necessarily work out that way, but it gave me some of the tools that I needed for future businesses down the road.
Now, were you doing anything else while you were trying to create this brand and make it successful?
I was doing a little work on the side in data analytics just to get,
Just to keep yourself
pay
up?
some of the bills. Yeah, and then I also was playing party poker and poker stars while that was still
Okay.
legal, and making a few extra dollars here and there based off of some poker skills that I had.
I didn't know you played poker.
Yeah, just
Dabble.
Used to play a lot more, 4 screens on at a time. I couldn't go more than 4 screens, but I needed at least 2 or 3 so it didn't move too slow for me. But
Yeah.
loved playing poker online.
That's cool. That's cool. So after you were doing that, what was your next vision? And I know you had your job. Were you thinking something else? Maybe you were thinking of ideas. And how did you come across your next either failure or success?
Yeah. So right as that was ending, some harsh realities were setting in that maybe I wasn't cut out to be a successful entrepreneur right out of the gate. Of course,
There's a doubt.
I had the expectations of being a billionaire off this idea, and I was barely making enough to pay rent for $500 a month. So understanding those realities, I decided maybe it was time that I looked in the corporate sector and figure out how to get a corporate job and use and maybe from that I would learn, meet people, and figure some more stuff out along the way. And as you know, I'm still young at this time. I'm 24, 25. So I end up applying and getting a job at Petco, where I get to be a marketing analyst. So I get to work in marketing, but also being analytics, so able to work with a lot of data and understand that as well. So
So you
a low,
mentioned, what were you saying?
it was still a low point that I had to give up on a current dream at that time, but it was something where I knew it'd help be my next launching pad, hopefully to something else.
But like that's just that entrepreneurial drive in you. That's just saying that there's something in you or something there that you could figure out eventually. You don't know when or how it's going to come across, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was very fortunate, learned a lot of stuff there, met a lot of great people. It eventually would lead to another business failure, few more multiple business failures. But, it was still a fantastic time. It was a great decision, even though I didn't realize it at the time. I also met my future girlfriend, fiance, then wife. So all of those things, and as it played out, there were a lot of great life lessons. I needed to grow up. I needed to meet more people. I
Yep.
needed to get better educated, and that's what I did, which eventually led me to feel like I could leave and start my next entrepreneurial venture.
You mentioned almost meeting people and networking. How important is networking as maybe an entrepreneur or just a person going straight into their career right away?
Yeah, going back to my grandfather, he had a few sayings, and one of his sayings that always stuck with me was, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." And he said that from a
I've
very
heard that.
early age, and I always thought it meant like, oh, well, you got to know these super successful people, and that's who's going to lift you out of things. But that's not really what it means at all. It's more of building relationships. And a lot of people say networking and build networks, and networks are a result of relationships, but it's really building relationships and understanding how you do that over time, building that trust, building an understanding, because there is a true sense of community with
Hmm.
all different factors of life. And when you build that out over time, you build those trees of where you can really help and where you can lean into expertise. And for example, sometimes you may just be looking for a mentor. Sometimes you're going to be looking for someone with a certain skill set who maybe could be your co-founder in something. Maybe you're just looking for a skill set to help you launch your business where it's a win-win for everybody. But all of these individual, and that's just a few examples, but all of these things are very relevant and very helpful for whenever you're going to be starting a business or at any point in life. It doesn't even matter for business. It could be for personal things. It could be for any. It's just an important factor that is a great lesson for all points of life.
Well, it's even with your business now. Tell me if I'm wrong. Were you when you merged and you merged into Ad Results, right? Ad
Yes,
Results
correct.
Media. So when you merged in, you had that connection relationship with the people over there already.
Yeah, so I'll tell the next few parts of my story because I'll get to
Go
there
on.
quickly. But I did leave Petco. I launched some direct to consumer known as D2C businesses, in baby furniture and cruiser bikes, and
Hmm.
unfortunately those things didn't work either. Learned some new things. That led me to understanding that I needed to work at an e-commerce company, and went to Provide Commerce, better known for Pro Flowers, Sherry's Berries. and I wanted to be on the digital side, but the only opportunities they had were on the offline, so radio and TV. When I started
How
work,
big was the market like online then?
how big was how much were
Like
they
what was
doing
the
online? Or
demand like online?
so everything they sold was online. It's just probably 2/3 of the budget was based on digital marketing, and one
Okay.
third was based on offline marketing. I always saw digital marketing as the future and really where everybody wants to be. But my only opportunity to get in there was someone just happened to be leaving the offline marketing team, and really more so on radio. Now, where I was very fortunate was the culture there was to test and learn. And two new big things that were coming up were streaming audio, so utilizing like Pandora and Spotify, and also podcasting. So was able to be one of the first to ever test into these different areas. And then for podcasting specifically, the first to really get in and understand what that medium looked like from a marketing standpoint and how to work with them. Now, what you mentioned at the real beginning was how did I get to know Ad Results? Well, Ad Results Advertising
Hmm.
was my agency that I had to work with, so I got to know them
Okay.
extremely well
I see.
from that side. And when I eventually left Provide Commerce with two of my colleagues there, we launched a company called Brown Bear Digital, and I focused on the offline consulting side. Eventually, we had some clients that overlapped with Ad Results Advertising who asked us to look at a merger, and it became much more it get
Bigger.
much easier to put together.
Yep.
And because the trust was built from that early relationship, and we understood each other and who each other were, and had not only a business relationship but had a friendly relationship, and that really helped create the merger. And then we took off from there as Ad Results Media.
And when was this? What year was this?
So we merged on September 1st, 2016. We
Yeah.
had some clients recommend us merging at a conference in early May 2016. So for those who know M&A really well, for us to pull off a merger in that span of time is nearly impossible unless you have that trust and relationships and really understand that you believe in each other's sides, and you can work through things very quickly.
So when did you go into the podcast route? When did you get into that industry?
So that was back when started at Provide Commerce. So Provide Commerce first podcast test was May of Mother's Day of 2010. We test with Adam Carolla, where a handshake deal was done, where it was going to be $15 for every bouquet of flowers. And that was, back in the early days when you could do deals based on performance. And Adam trusted that we would give him the data, and we gave him the ability to be our first podcast advertiser. And after a
How'd that go?
40,000, that was, sorry, say it again.
How'd that go?
Yeah, after writing a $40,000 plus dollar check, we decided that we really need to invest in podcasting. And again, going back to that test and learn mentality, decided to try to get on every podcast possible, and anyone who had a decent amount of audience would go after. So your Joe Rogans, your Bill Burrs, your Mark Marons, started reaching out to all of them and
Did
really
you
being
work?
their
Did
first
you work
advertiser.
with? Did you work with any of them?
Worked with all of them.
Oh,
So
wow.
we were, there's Bill Burr, comedians take their own, go their own ways. If you search Bill Burr, Sherry's Berries, you'll see an ad that I wrote for him that went viral, and it was fantastic and did amazing from a results standpoint. Our CEO at the time was not thrilled with how the messaging came across, but then when he saw the results, brought me in and asked how we could do more of that. So it really, podcasting was something that was driving that acquisition growth marketing machine, and I had that aha moment and wanted to keep pushing, and realized that there was something that could help a lot of other companies, not just the one that I was working at.
So you were sort of, this was word of mouth that all these guys started coming to you, or you were reaching out?
With Ad Results Advertising as a partner, we reached out to every single podcast we could possibly look up. So they understood the media side, and what I was doing was
Was
in
it
the background.
was it a fairly big company that it was easy to get to these people, or was it that the podcast world wasn't so big,
Now
or a little bit of both?
it was a mix of everything, but
Yeah,
most podcasters were podcasting truly out of their garage at that time.
that's
Bill Burr
awesome.
was in his garage. Rogan was in a garage. Like these guys were just setting up a microphone kind of like we are right now, and they
Going at
weren't
it.
going into any studios or anything like that. Yeah, absolutely. We always say authenticity is the most important thing with podcast, and that truly is the case. The more authentic the podcast is, the more authentic that ad read is going to be, and the better performance that those advertisers are going to see. And really, comedians do it best because they are so they're naturally funny. They'll naturally move into something. They'll be able to bring that comedic tone to something. It sounds authentic. It normally is authentic. Like for all of our clients that we work with, if a individual host will not use the product or speak to it authentically, we pull the buy down. So we will not even buy it. So really, when you're hearing the products that we represent, the products and services we represent, be spoken about by an individual podcaster, it's because we have gone through a massive vetting process to make sure that they'll actually get the product or service, use it, and really speak to it as authentically as possible. And then it creates a much better experience for the listener as well.
So how does that work? Is it just like an advertisement, like I shout a company out and that's the ad?
So in many of the cases, if we have a product, and I'll use a product like MeUndies, which is a company we represent. If we're going to have Joe Rogan, who we've been talking about, speak about MeUndies, what we're going to do is we're going to send him, we're going to get his underwear size, we're going to get some prints that he likes, we're
It's
going to send
creepy,
him
you know
that.
that.
Yeah, we're going to send him all those. We're going to send him some other things that we think he might be interested in. Let him try it out, let him use it, get a phone call set up, talk about the product, talk about his thoughts on everything, give him our ad copy, let him tell us what he likes, what he doesn't like off of that. And then from there, revise, send it to him, let him do the ad reads. And our team listens to every spot. And as we hear those spots, we grade it based off of certain creative criteria. And we'll create a feedback loop based off of what we hear, of what we liked and what we didn't like. So we'll reemphasize things we liked and thought they did great. We'll tell them like if there's any mistakes or anything that's not in there. The Rogans of the world, they don't really make that many mistakes, so we're not really telling them any of those things. They're all pros, but just still giving the examples of what it is. And then we also are measuring performance data from what we're seeing based off of how much it's driving, and we connect all of those things together. And it creates an ability for us to work with our advertisers to let them know where they should lean into. And with podcasters, we're kind of, as much as we're buying time off of them, we want them to succeed, because if they succeed, our clients succeed. So we're trying to continually give them feedback and advice to make them better, and it makes the entire ecosystem better.
That makes sense. So when you're the top performing advertisement agency, right?
We have the most market share and the most dollars coming through us
Is
of
that
anyone.
recently or has that always been?
So since going back to that merger date, we have,
That's
that's
when the
when we
ball
started
started rolling.
tracking everything. And that's ever since then, we have been number one. Before then, I happened to be, when we were Brownberry Digital, we were more in consulting. So we were working across multiple agencies. We were agency agnostic, didn't matter. We weren't buying the media. We were just consulting different clients on how to build things out. Ad results advertising at that time was still, there wasn't enough data on podcasting to really know what it all looked like overall.
Mm-hmm.
But as we merged together, we really wanted to help start measuring and help different partners in the space understanding what those dollars look like. And ever since then, we've always been number one in market share.
So how does that feel that you're number one on a ranking for an industry?
I would say it feels great.
Yeah.
Although the interesting thing is, and I don't know if this is the entrepreneurial spirit or everything else, but like it's constantly being number one is great. But the only thing that makes me feel good enough about it is knowing that we are setting up ourselves for success to continue to be number one. So it's hard and I think this is true for a lot of entrepreneurs. It's hard to celebrate in the moment that success, or look at past success and celebrate that as well. And it's constantly thinking ahead of how to make sure you're positioning yourself to be that number one and to be that top performer overall. So that constantly, I'm always thinking about looking forward and not enjoying the success of the past.
So you have these big clients. You don't need to answer this. How much do you charge for how much? What's the average charge for providing the service?
No, absolutely. It's a question we get from all advertisers, so happy to answer. But won't go into specifics, but happy to answer like the basics of what it looks like overall. So we charge a commission based off of what an individual advertiser is spending. If that advertiser spends a lot more on a monthly level, then we have different tiers that it could drop over time. But we try to keep it as concise as possible and simplify it to make sure that everyone we work with gets benefits, and as they continue to do more business with us, they get more benefits out of that. The great thing about working with us as an agency is that, based off of how much, going back to being the market leader in the space, with the insights that we understand, and just on negotiations alone, we can drive all of that value that we're charging an individual client. So from day one, the client is already getting the value out of us. Then everything we do from a creative standpoint, trafficking, paperwork, financials, everything is just all gravy for them. But really, a lot of our long-term clients all see the benefits of all of those individual things and realize how good of a deal that it is working with us as an agency.
Well, the podcast game is still fairly new. I think, what is it, 10 years, 15 years now?
There's a
Or is it
debate on
longer
when
than
the
that?
there's a debate on when the first podcast technically was, but really from first advertisements, we're talking about 13, 14 years now.
Okay. So what do you expect in the next 10 years about podcast world? Like, how big can it get?
So right now, when we first did podcasting, it was too small to measure. A couple of years in, it was at about $5 million in annual advertising dollars.
Your
This
company or
year,
in general?
no, in general, the whole industry.
That's nothing.
Just a couple of years ago, it finally eclipsed $1 billion. It's looking at this year to eclipse $2 billion, and in a few years from now, eclipse $4 to $5 billion. So I think as you look out to 10 years from now, it's probably somewhere in the range of $8 to $10 billion, if not greater. I'm going a little conservative on that, but it's the space is still definitely in a growth mode, and there's maturing, and there's a lot of technology that's going to catch up to the podcasting space that is already in the video space right now. And as that occurs over time, and as more supply comes out and more large enterprise advertisers like the Cokes of the world, the McDonald's of the world, feel more comfortable in advertising in this ecosystem, that's when the dollars will continue to explode.
What makes a successful podcast?
I think just great it depends what you determine as success. So like, some people will determine success in far as overall listenership. Some will just do like, hey, whatever the dedicated audience, if they absolutely love it. How I define a successful podcast is a podcast that's continuously growing, has strong base of listenership, and people are referring it to other people. Now, for that to be successful, you need to be, great, authentic, as we talked about, and it has to be a topic that people care about, whether it's true crime, comedy, sports, news talk, and just something where, if someone else was talking to a friend, they would feel comfortable of saying like, hey, I love X, you should listen to it as well. So that's how I really define it overall.
And what are some of the best? Do you know of any other platforms other than like YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, the generic ones for releasing a podcast?
Yeah, so your main ones are going to be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, as you just mentioned, are you're by far three like behemoths that represent a ton. Then you have like Google has a platform, Stitcher has a platform. There's all these small little tiny platforms overall. Like iHeart, you'd want it on iHeart's app, you'd want it on Odyssey's app. So like all of those guys though represent anywhere from like 1 1%, maybe 2% of listenership in some cases. But if you hit Apple, Spotify, YouTube, you're going to get a majority of what you need.
Okay. We're just about to wrap this up, Steve, but if you could give yourself one piece of advice, you go back in time, 18-year-old Steve, what would it be?
And this is not a invest in Amazon and put all your dollars in Apple as well. No, I would, in all seriousness, I would just tell myself to just keep believing and keep moving forward. As I think with all entrepreneurs, it's a roller coaster ride. And no matter what you're in, you're going to have some highs, you're going to have some lows, you're going to have twists and turns. You don't know what's going to be coming overall.
Never know.
And as long as you just keep moving forward, you're going to figure it out and you're going to find your way.